Hi, I'm Ashley with Campbell. Thanks for investing your time to help your community be a great place to live. Before you watch the video, make sure to click the subscribe button so that we can help you make educated decisions as a board member.
Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Ben Messerschmidt with Epic Forensics Engineering. I'm an executive director with the firm. Brief little bit about the firm is that we are engineers and very true to our name as far as forensics and engineering, and can fully support anything a condominium or community association would necessarily need. Anything from plans and specs to actual evaluation. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and let's see if I get it right on the first try, because this normally doesn't happen. But here we go. Okay, perfect. So like Ashley said, what we have here is just going to be our construction documentation explained, given by me, as you see right there. I just want to make sure that the screen is changing. Everyone should be seeing a few bullets and the construction documents, right, Ashley?
Looks great.
Perfect. Awesome. Awesome. All right. So everything works on my end. Nice. So first time and first time for the first time. So for construction documents, we are going to be focusing mainly on these elements as you see here: plans, contract, product or material submittals, change orders, payment application, requests for information or RFIs, and OAC meetings and meeting minutes. Now, the intent of this presentation or of this course is to really give you a generalized overview of each of these elements. I mean, we could even make courses on each and every one of these bullet point items as you see here. But I'll definitely be talking plenty about each and every one of these items, and talking about how it may be applicable to your community, and what each component is, what it may mean to the different entities operating, whether it be on your behalf as a whether it be an engineer aspect, whether it be a contractor aspect, or whether you have a board member or anyone that's present that wants to be involved during any sort of construction project or any project that may be undertaken at your property. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So first things first is going to be your plans. So this is going to be the basis for any sort of construction project, plain and simple. Plans are going to be designed by an architect or an engineer or both, depends on how complex your project may be. You may even have some like interior designers or very specific niche trades that are going to be incorporating their design elements into a plan set. Now, it's very important to know what the plans are intended to do. So it is really to depict the scope of the proposed construction work with the necessary details. Now, it's not intended to go ahead and talk about means and methods and how to go ahead and accomplish this goal. This is going to be a generalized scope as to how to get things done. So you'll have your site plans, which is going to be your overview, which I'll show a brief example of. You're going to have associated details on crucial locations, but it's not going to outline every single spot of, okay, how to roll on waterproofing, let's say, for the general aspect of things. It's going to be deferring back to manufacturers' recommendations or their published data. Now, plans will be permitted, and now that permit is going to be obtained by the contractor. It's very important. So if you're going to be acting as a community association, so you'd be hiring your engineer. The engineer or architect or designer, we'll just loosely call it designer, will go ahead and do their design work and produce a plan set. Now, nowadays, you're going to be seeing plans and specifications. I know everyone just coins them plans and specs. The specs used to be a separate booklet, which was commonly called a project manual. Nowadays, you really see the specs incorporated into the plans. So you just have one document or one package that's going to be delivered over to the municipality. It makes it easier, quite frankly, and a lot of times a spec book of what it used to be is really just referencing certain standards, which is very simple to go ahead and do on 1 or 2 or 3 plan sheets on the actual permitted plan set. So the contractor is going to go ahead and pull for permit with the authority having jurisdiction, usually going to be the city, town, what have you, And if there's any DERM aspect of anything, then might have to go ahead and get a DERM permit as well. It is up to the contractor to complete that permit application. So it's going to be 1 or 2 sheets. Contractor is going to go ahead and fill it out. It will have some coordination with the engineer or with the designer as far as providing original copies of plans, maybe any special inspector forms. There'll also be some owner obligations, and owner will use that as a community association in this example. So whether it be any funds or any payment, or identifying certain personnel, things like that, but it's all stipulated on those general forms that you can download from their website usually. Now, during the course of the project, plans will change, plans will develop. So if you were to go ahead and look at any project, historically, you will see a permit set. If you would pull a records set from the plan or pull a records file from the city, you'd have a permit set, you'd have a record set, and likely several different sets leading up to that record set. Those several different sets are going to be really different revisions during the course of the repairs, during the course of the project, whether it be material selection or increase in scope, or value engineering, which is a loose term of going ahead and reducing down scope or swapping out materials, typically for more economical ones to fit within a budget that the owner may have or the client may have. But there'll be several different revisions, and even revisions as a request from the review board at the municipality that would effectuate that. And you'll see multiple, and those are being going to called construction sets. Construction sets with revision numbers, and each on the title block, you'll see revision 1 with such and such date, revision 2, such and such date, so on and so forth. Oh, excuse me. But at the end of it, an as-built set will be created at the end of the project, usually by the contractor, to go ahead and depict the actual detail. So there will be a set out there, so you'll know what was actually done and how it was actually done, both for the community's records as well as the municipality's records. And here's just an example of that site plan as I was talking about. So this is just going to be the overall floor plan, plain and simple. Well, this is showing a reflective ceiling plan, but the same thing would really apply. You obviously have some structural details as well. If you needed to go ahead and have any structural design or any mechanical design, they would all be their separate sections. So they have separate prefixes. A is going to be architectural, S is going to be structural, M or MEP, mechanical, E, electrical, P, plumbing, fire protection would be FP, and the list goes on. Now, contracts. So moving over to contracts is going to be likely the second part of this equation as far as kicking off an overall project. You're expected to go ahead and have a contract, obviously, with your designer, but you also have a contract with your contractor as well. And if you have an owner's rep involved, owner's rep as well. Now, it is very important that I'm just jumping to the third bullet on here to note that your design professionals, contractor, and if you had an owner's rep in this scenario, there's zero contractual relationship amongst those three. The only unifying element to their three contracts are going to be going with the client or with the owner, with the community association. The only caveat being if it was an actual design build contract, and that would be a scenario where you typically have the designer and the contractor merging together or working together, and then one proposal to the association to accomplish whatever task was given to them. But it's very important to know that. So as far as from a designer standpoint of things, as far as what authority does the designer have against or towards the contractor, you got to understand that will be limited to a certain extent as far as controlling their means and methods. Any sort of impact or any sort of input from that would be coming from the contracted party, which in this scenario would be the client or the association. I would strongly recommend utilizing boilerplate information, boilerplate contracts, and starting at using those as a starting point, whether it be for any of the entities that you hire on. Those have been vetted by a lot of different professionals within the industry, and it, quite honestly, it makes a lot of sense. And you can pick and choose what elements you want to include in there. So it makes it very user-friendly. The most ubiquitous item or ubiquitous entity would be the AIA, the American Institute of Architects, excuse me. So having their template, which you can easily pay for or download online, It's like AIA.org or something. Using that as a starting point. That is going to be fantastic, and that's going to minimize any sort of added time you may need or may require, may want to have your community association attorney to modify, to really tailor it for the entity that you're contracting with. Now, the details of the contract is obviously going to be very, very important throughout the course of the project, because there may be some items, some potential conflicts, or just some potential gray area during the course of the project that you may need to refer back to the details of the contract. So having explicit language in there is going to be crucial. I'd also recommend going ahead and making direct reference to the plan set, the engineered plan set within the contract. So that gives your engineer or architect more teeth as far as persuading or encouraging the contractor to really conform to this specific plan set, although it is inherent within their permit. Still, having duplication, having more teeth is only going to be better and future-proof your association from any sort of issues you may have. Now, if an association, depending on the size of the project, doesn't elect to go ahead and utilize any boilerplate contract like an AIA form, one thing that we see, and we speaking for the industry, is that the use of the payment application form within the AIA is awesome. It is fantastic. It is very black and white, and it makes everyone's life easier as far as the review process is concerned. Makes it very black and white, both from the technical end as well as the non-technical end, making it over to the client. So if you were to go to the AIA website, so AIAcontracts.org, I was close. Okay, so you'd see several different series of contracts. So you see the A series and you see the B series. These are going to be the two most common ones you're going to be dealing with if you were to go down this route. And they outline duties, specific duties. They give the definitions, the whole nine. So this is going to be really taking a lot of the thought out of it. I know there's certain associations that love to have a committee for everything with a lot of different people on there. And if there's going to be a committee regarding a construction project, just for everyone's benefit on that committee, I would strongly suggest first looking towards an AIA vetted contract as a starting point, if nothing else, and then you go ahead and get crazy with it if you like. Now let's talk about getting into the throes of the actual construction project. So what is going to be going on when the work is actually happening? Now, there's going to be a lot of communication that's going to be going back and forth between all the parties. And we'll just say all the parties being the client, the owner, your designer, your contractor, and your owner's rep, if it's applicable. The first item that you're going to go ahead and see, in all likelihood at some point in time, is going to be a change order. I might call it a CO, or if it's going to be a potential change order or proposed change order, it would be a PCO, meaning that it's proposed but has not yet made the transition from PCO to CO. CO would be actually on the books. So here's just a quick and easy summary, just to let you know some high points about change orders. Now, they're either going to be an increase or a decrease in construction scope, and it has to have pre-approval by the client to go ahead and be considered valid. Now, if the contractor is to go ahead and do work beyond what is already contracted for, increasing scope for whatever reason that's not pre-approved, usually there are provisions within any sort of contract saying that the contractor is moving into uncharted territory, so to speak, and the client is not under any sort of obligation to go ahead and pay for those. So that's why change orders exist, just to keep everything nice and tidy, because when you look back at your project 5, 10, 15 years from now, you want to be able to go ahead and make sure everything was organized, even on the back end, but more importantly, even during the throes of it. Construction scope can be also duration. So it can impact overall price and time. Some of these contracts are really going to or may have liquidated damage provisions, meaning that a contractor needs to be done with their work arbitrarily in 30 days. And if it takes them 31 or 32 or 40 days, for each day that the contract still goes on, there will be fiscal penalties paid by the contractor. Basically, the money's being removed from their contract until that contract is done. It's also a good way to track associated fees during the course of the project as well, from a budgeting and a time standpoint. Thanks. Now, ultimately, these change orders will be reflected in the payment applications, or the pay apps as they're commonly referred to. So you'll know where your base contract started, let's say arbitrarily $100,000, and you went through, during the course of it, you went through about 5 different change orders, which each amounted up to about $10,000. And so your new contract value is going to be $150,000. And we'll go through an example a little bit later during this course, so you can go ahead and see more. Here's a change order sample. So to the most important items is really going to be talking about the time down here and the actual contract value, dollars and cents, right? I mean, it's really what every association really cares about: how much, how long. And that's going to be crucial. Now, execution of this agreement, this is just the AIA, and you see the document G701. Again, they have so many different documents, very nice and easy to go ahead and take advantage of these things. Now, first, the process will go something like this. It's going to be submitted as a change order to the engineer or architect for their review to basically confirm whether or not this would be a valid change order. Valid meaning that this would be in excess of what's shown on the plans, as well as in excess of what's shown within or what's documented in the contractor's contract with the association. So that's the first check. And once that check is confirmed, and make sure that the numbers are also in line with any previously negotiated items, that is then signed off by the engineer, basically saying this is a valid change order. That gets sent over to the association or the client for their review and their execution as well. If it only has an engineer or an architect's signature along with the submitting contractor, that does not equate to an approval. Remember, the engineer does not have control over the association or community association's budget. Engineer does not have control of their funds. They will not be cutting a check on behalf of the association. That is not the intent. So it is considered a valid document once this owner signature is placed on there. That is the only point. One thing we tend to see on larger scale projects is that you can utilize change orders to keep track of weather delays. Now you'll have, let's say, change order number 1, it could be change order 1.1, and then 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, or A, B, C, and D, however it may come up. But especially getting into the rainy season that we are here in sometimes sunny South Florida, it's a very good tool to know where it stands, especially when you have those liquidated damages. Or some municipalities only allow even large scale construction work or exterior construction work to take place during the summer months. So being very strict between the April to September or November timeframe is going to be crucial to keep track of that. Change orders may also impact critical path for the overall project. So time is of the essence regarding the review from every party. So review from your engineer, architect, and the client, and that approval. The last thing you'd want to go ahead and happen is that it takes 2 or 3 weeks for your engineer or architect to go ahead and do the review, and it takes the same amount of time for the client to go ahead and do the review. On most AAA contracts, if that exists within this realm of this example, they will stipulate timeframes, maximum timeframes for each entity to do their review and provide a response. And it is not going to be 2 or 3 weeks for either of those items. You're probably talking about the order about anywhere from 5 to 7 days usually. Change orders may also include added general conditions from the contractor, which would account for any employee salaries, any equipment rentals, so on and so forth. So this easy example of this would be if you had a facade restoration project and you had multiple swing stages, and the change order was for weather delays for 2 months. If there was a hurricane that hit South Florida, they had to demobilize all the swing stages and remobilize. There will be an impact on the general conditions specifically for that, to account for that unforeseen condition or quote unquote act of God, which will also be stipulated within the contract. And change orders are going to be tracked within a change order log. And we'll talk about other logs as well. You'll have an RFI log, and a payment application as well. So here's a sample of that change order. So we'll go through 1 through 4 real fast, and this is just going to be arbitrary. This is one nice way to keep track of it from the bookkeeping. So you'll have your change order with a whatever number it may be, the approval date, and this would be associated to the client's approval date. Generally, what are we talking about? To relocate a 12-inch rainwater leader from the 6th floor parking garage, the proposed cost, and the previous change order amount. You see it's 0 because we haven't had anything before, the total, and the revised contract value. So this would be a $100,000 contract plus the $15,000 gets you to your 115. And that overall time impact, 10 days. So you'll see that 10 days was added on to this value. So the project was originally intended on being completed on the 5th of January, 24. And it just keeps on running down, running down, running down. This is going to be super easy to go ahead and keep track of everything. It's very common practice for a large scale project. Now moving over to a payment application or pay apps. So pay apps are going to be submitted by the contractor for payment each month or within the billing period. Typically it's each month, and it's going to be stipulated within the actual contract. Now there may be some contracts where the contractor is entitled to go ahead and receive 20% up front and then broken down into 3 equal payments over the course of the project duration. So they may bill at different times. But typically for a standard sort of restoration-based contract on a community, it'd be monthly payments, monthly draws. In a typical payment application platform, it's going to have quantities of repair, which are going to be very important. And those are going to be, again, tying back to the plans and the bidding process with the contractor. So let me actually take a step back real fast here. So as part of starting off any sort of construction project that you may have in your community, it's very important from a design standpoint to establish a detailed bid form. A detailed bid form which will be outlining several different tasks. So removal and replacement of stucco is going to be one. Going to be any crack injection, any reinforcement cover correction, any full slab or partial slab repairs, and those have associated individual bidding quantities. Whether you can forecast those bidding quantities, if there's going to be any sort of destructive work or evaluation work done by the engineer prior to, or if estimates are just placed on there by the engineer or the owner's representative. But it's important to have more detail than not. And the reason why is that if you were just to put lump sum bidding everywhere, and don't get me wrong, lump sum bidding is good for certain aspects, but not for every single scenario. So an example would be re-waterproofing a pool, an elevated pool. So it's going to be a concrete pool. You know you're going to have to go ahead and remove the existing diamond bright and whatever waterproofing and expose out that structural shell. Now, depending on the condition of that structural shell, you may have some unforeseen repairs. You may have cracks, you may have spalls, you may have rebar that you'll have to deal with. Those will be the unforeseens. But for now, let's just go ahead and use these as unforeseen items, but we still want to get individualized pricing for it because that number can get pretty big. And you don't want to be married to a singular contractor for that value. It should be a number that should be reviewed prior to the selection of a contractor. So you have at least these 3 items, and they'll all be broken down, whether it be square foot or linear foot, whatever is applicable. But you still can lump sum the value for the waterproofing and lump sum the value for the new diamond bright, because you know it's only going to be within the pool, within that confined body of water without any water in it. But the true unknowns for items that can increase, go up and down, you want to itemize those things out. Okay, so getting back to the payment application. So the inspecting engineer will be reviewing those quantities. They're the first ones that receive the payment application. And very similar to the change order, it goes to the engineer architect first, and then it goes to the client or the contractor. Or sorry, the client or the owner, excuse me. All right, so for example, if it's only stucco-based work, then the bulk of the pay app should be on that stucco line item within the pay app on the pay app continuation sheet. So it's going to make a whole lot more sense once we get to this. As you see, there's another AIA document, and this is going to be something you'll see a lot of during construction. And honestly, probably one of the best documents that they have, in my personal opinion. This is going to be the cover sheet. So you'll see all the detail on here, the original contract amount, the total from the change orders, any retainage. If there's going to be any retainage, typically you're going to see about a 10% retainage during the course of a project. All this front end data is going to be submitted or filled out by the contractor and submitted by the contractor first to the engineer or the inspecting engineer for their review. Now, there may be scenarios where quantities don't line up, whether it be up or down. It's going to be up to the engineer or the designer to work with the contractor to make sure that the work that was actually done correctly and billed for, or done correctly, is billed for. And you don't see any scenarios where the contractor is going to be attempting to overbill or even some rare scenarios underbill. But things may happen during the course of it. It's going to be very data heavy. You got to expect that there may be some deltas up and down, but those will all get flushed out. So once this is approved, you'll see only 2 signing areas. This doesn't have a 3rd signing area. So the contractor is going to sign this section up here. And then where it says architect certificate for payment, this is, again, this means the same exact thing. This is the validity, the architect or engineer confirming the validity of the detail within this proposed pay app. Does not mean that the architect or engineer is cutting a check on behalf of the association to pay the contractor. But once both lines are going to be signed off on, that's going to be then sent over to the association or the client to provide payment. And again, payment time periods will be stipulated typically within the AIA document. Now, the continuation sheet. This is where you see those individual line items on that bid form that I made reference to previously. You'll have several different line items on here, so you know what value, what percentage of that value is going to be paid out, what was paid out previously, what's this period, and there's also going to be requirements to provide supporting backup. If it's going to be a very material heavy project, let's say you're going to be removing and replacing all your sliding glass doors, for example, you better be seeing associated receipts for those hundreds of sliding glass doors or however many that there may be. And if those are not installed, then that should not be 100% request payment item at that point in time. This can also be loosely coined as a schedule of values as well. Some more details on the pay app, many of which we already spoke about. You'll notice that the schedule of values is going to be an added exhibit on the original contract. It's also going to be very important. Again, the more detail you can have and more teeth you can have in the contract, the better. It's going to make conversations faster, more black and white, minimize any sort of potential back and forth downtime, and you really just get the work done, which is what everyone wants, plain and simple. Delays in payment, just like delays in review as well for the change orders, may have an impact to overall project performance and may equate to project delays. So you want to be on top of that. Retainage, like I said, usually 10% is held until the end of the project and released following the approval of the final payment application. Now, final walkthrough and punch list completions are always recommended before release of that retainage. That's going to be the last opportunity that the association or client is going to have a quote unquote financial upper hand to knock out all those loose ends. While it is a responsibility for the contractor to be doing their individualized punch lists, it is always best practice to go ahead and have your inspecting engineer or architect perform the same and even work with the association, with the community to get any detail that they're aware of. If it's going to be on a facade project, for example, where you're going drop by drop by drop by drop by drop all across the building, I would strongly recommend doing those punch lists and those closeouts per drop, because the last thing you'd really want is go ahead and remove that swing stage back to that location to go ahead and address some punch related item. The move of the swing stage alone is going to dwarf the level of potential repair that may be needed for a punch list item. Okay, moving now to requests for information or RFIs. So these are really just going to be formalized communication for plan or design clarifications. Basically, the contractor needs some added direction as to what to do given a certain scenario. The request can be made from the contractor to owner or the designers if it's going to be a design-based issue, let's say, or a big material selection between the contractor and the owner. You want to go to gold leaf wallpaper or traditional wallpaper, for example, would be a perfect one for the owner to get their involvement on. But most of the communication is really contractor with the designers or with the engineer of record. RFIs are going to be logged similarly to change orders in a separate log for tracking purposes. And the timeline for responses are going to be dictated within the contract. AIA allots a maximum of 5 business days, so a week for those reviews to be done. And also on there might be some time-sensitive items independent of that time frame that may impact critical path performance from the contractor. Here's a sample. I don't know how legible it may be on everyone's screen, but essentially it's going to go ahead and identify the RFI number, who's it from, who's it going to, the date, any reference, any sort of detail they may provide, and then the actual question. And this may be referencing a discrepancy between certain plans, which may happen, or maybe plan integration from the architect versus the structural engineer, and things may not be lining up. And they may say, okay, well, what elevation are we supposed to go ahead and build XYZ component? Architectural plans show elevation 1, structural plans show elevation 2, and for the hell of it, let's say civil plans show elevation 3. Let me know. And each one of those answers obviously can have a massive ripple effect. So it's very important that answers are going to be unified across. If there's any sort of level of uncertainty, this would usually spark the need for an immediate meeting to get that clarity to resolve whatever sort of issue may come up. But RFIs may also be utilized as an initial conversation starter to a change order, for example. If it was a material selection item of architectural plans show used gold leaf and interior design plans show regular wallpaper, the contractor may have only accounted for just the wallpaper item and not the architecture or not the gold leaf scenario. So the question may be posed here of what would you like us to do between this discrepancy? Which one's accurate? If the architect comes back and says, or the owner comes back and says, I want the gold leaf, and the paper trail all adds up showing that the contractor only bid on the wallpaper and it's a valid change order, then this RFI would then be turned into a change order for the delta, the price difference between the typical wallpaper and the gold leaf. Okay, so you won't see any sort of approval, so to speak, on here, but there will be communication back and forth. Now, on some projects, there may be multiple RFIs for the same topic because the conversation just be going on and on. But a typical response, usually an easy response from an engineer, is going to be defer back to plans, defer back to the specific provision of the contract, refer back to something that's already been published and documented and shown to everyone. That'd be the best case scenario. Here's an example of an RFI log, very similar to what we saw on the change order log. So you'll know the RFI number, general topic, status, if it's closed or open, overdue, who's it from, general contractor or subcontractors, when was it received by whatever party, the last action, who's it forwarded on to, who's it due, when, the review days, and this is going to be a running tally, total days, remaining days. So really just from a logging standpoint of things, making sure that all the detail that goes into a construction project is accurately accounted for. Now moving over to submittals. Now submittals can come in a variety of different formats. They're going to be individual document packages from the contractor or subcontractors to the architect or engineer, AE, that's what that stands for, by the way, architect/engineer, very commonly used term. and the owner for their review and approval. The minimum submittal content is usually going to be shown and stipulated within the engineering specifications, which nowadays are mainly found within the plans. So they'll say at a minimum, we need to have your paint spec or your paint submittal, your stucco submittal, your concrete submittal, or whatever the project details may entail, but they'll show at least a minimum. The more, the better. You likely want to also see, let's say, a color sample. If you're going to go ahead and talk about finishes, that's going to be very crucial to go ahead and get the approval. Well, from a material performance standpoint of things, from your architect or engineer, and then an actual color selection by the owner. The timelines for the responses, again, are also should be dictated within the contract. Typical AIA gives you a maximum of 10 days for the review. That's going to be usually the engineering review from the contractor. And here we have some examples that you see below. Now, more information, the better. Like I said, concrete, repair mortars, anything that has concrete in it basically should be in one package. Any of the stucco components should be in one package. Roofing, same thing. And you'd also, at least in Florida, you want to also go ahead and have your notice of approvals that are going to be included in there, or any sort of shop drawings are also good to go ahead and have within your submittals. Usually going to be within your windows, sliding glass door systems. Those will have associated shop drawings, or any post-tensioning systems. Those would have shop drawings as well. Finishes, given the fact that the finishes and color selection are going to be very subjective, you'll almost always see that selection be dictated by the owner. You can also go ahead and do mock-ups that can be included within the actual design plans and within the contract as well, which will be good from a community association standpoint of things to show transparency to the overall community, or really just see how it performs and how it may look. Because looking at one piece of tile in your hands is going to be entirely different when you see it actually laid down on the floor in your lobby or in your other congregating area. And one thing's important, and we didn't really talk much about it, but during the course of a project, you want to make sure that, well, number one, you'll be spending a lot of money in all likelihood to be going through this project. You want to make sure that you're going to have a successful project, meaning that the project is going to be obviously on budget and time, which is a high bar in the first place. But more importantly, that the repairs work. Sounds very basic, but you want the repairs to work. And how do they work? By thorough inspections by your inspecting engineer or architect, but also having potential third-party inspections by any manufacturer's representative. So if you're using all Sika products, for example, you may have a Sika representative or a BASF or Tremco or Sherwin-Williams or Benjamin Moore or any of the other slew of international companies do their inspections, and also write associated letters ensuring that the work is being done to still achieve a material warranty at the end of the day. Some of your best warranties that you can get within a building system is really going to boil down to your roofing warranty. Those typically have a 20-year roofing warranty as standard. Now, it's very important to understand that you'll have a difference between a manufacturer's warranty and a contractor's warranty. Contractor's mainly just going to be on labor. Okay, and those warranties are going to be anywhere from 1 year to 3 years to 5 years. But it all depends on the materials, all depends on the details. And if you want to be going for a 5-year option, I would expect and budget for added fees from the contractor to accommodate a 5-year warranty from them. But roofing warranties are great. Like I said, they're 20 years, usually come as an NDL or a no dollar limit warranty. So you want to make sure that the roof work specifically, as an example, be done exceptional. You have all the checkoffs and sign-offs between your inspecting engineer and the third-party manufacturer's rep. Same thing goes for waterproofing, for example. You get 5, 10, 5+5, or even 20-year warranties as well. So being conscious of that, and that will be stipulated within the engineering plans. They will say use XYZ product and achieve XYZ manufacturing warranty. That's going to be in there, and the contractor has to go ahead and accomplish that. If it doesn't happen, that's going to be a void within the actual contract. The contractor is not going to be meeting its contractual obligations, and there will be a ripple effect as I'm sure you can imagine, for something like that. So this is going to be getting a little bit more in the detail. This is an example of one of our shop drawing stamps whenever we get it, or our project submittal stamps. And you will see on here that it doesn't say approved. It says something close to it, but doesn't say approved. And I don't care what engineering firm or what architect or what have you, you'll likely not see that approved stamp. The closest to it, at least in this scenario, is going to be no exceptions taken. Whoops. No exceptions taken, meaning that there are no comments and it is good to go as specified on this documentation. So saying it's good without saying it's good. Probably more of a legal concern than anything else. And I'm certainly no attorney to go ahead and put my 2 cents in there. Corrections noted. Corrections noted may just be some clarifications, whether it be talking about certain terminations or actually circling what color or what type of materials to be utilized on there, because a lot of these times you'll get a product data sheet that may have 5 different options on there, and sometimes the contractor may not go ahead and circle what they're intending on installing. Now, this can be handled in 2 ways. Engineer can go ahead and just send it back and say, contractor, do your work and submit this the right way. Or the engineer can go ahead and just make the circle around what it's going to be and send it back to the contractor. Now, there may be some added corrections or some added comments on there that will require more work by the contractor. So really talking about these 2. So verify and make corrections, resubmit, or reject it. There are scenarios where value engineering may come up where the contractor wants to submit a different product for whatever reason. In the height of COVID, it could be any sort of availability issues. Any massive lead time, let's say on roof underlayment, which I know at one point was operating at like a year lead time, or some basic sealants as well, or and we'll contractually as well talk about the price of plywood. But anyways, and so if a lesser material gets submitted to the engineer, lesser than what is stipulated on the engineering plans, it's very straightforward and easy for the engineer to do their work. They're just going to go ahead and say reject it. Usually engineers are going to be specifying in their plans XYZ product or an approved equal. The equal is the most important part here. So there may be scenarios where they go back and forth on multiple times, and the submittal log will also be kept up in the same manner as the RFI log and the change order log. So it may take a couple of iterations before the contractor actually gets things right. And the verify, make corrections, resubmit, there may be a material compatibility issue between, let's say, your tile mortar and your tile. So certain things you want to go ahead and be conscious of, and the engineer will go ahead and make comments associated to that and send that back to the contractor. Some examples of material submittals is, here you go, is a typical product, typical waterproofing product. It's going to be the Tremco 250 GC. It's a cold applied waterproofing. So this is going to be a typical submittal. So it lets you know, okay, what its basic uses are, so on and so forth, limitations, which is going to be the most important thing for an engineer. And then you have your physical properties. And this is more where the traditional specification manual came into play of, okay, well, make sure that you have a product that it has a film thickness that meets ASTM C836 and meets this ASTM and meets that ASTM, so on and so forth. Here's an example of a warranty coming from the manufacturer, which again is going to be crucial. This is also an item that should be requested prior to or near the time of that retainage, when you're going to be releasing that retainage towards the end of the project. You need to make sure that you're getting your warranties and make sure that it's filled out and confirm with the manufacturer that it is valid. We've been on projects where we've come in after the fact, let's say 2 years after a certain project was completed, and looking at a condition of a deficient condition and saying, okay, all right, this is easy. Well, if you did your project 2 years ago, you still have 5 years left on your warranty. So just file a warranty claim and this should be handled no problem. The association goes ahead and fills out the warranty paperwork, sends that over. Lo and behold, they find out that the warranty is not in existence for whatever reason, the contractor didn't file it or a plethora of different reasons. That, lack of a better term, that sucks. That is egg on everyone's face that was involved on that project. That is really why you're doing all this work and investing in the property, to go ahead and make sure you have some level of assurances. In that scenario, and in those scenarios, you can still attempt to get a retroactive warranty, but it will take time, will likely take some money as well. But that becomes not a straight line process as you might expect. And again, another example, you have the submittal samples. So a color wheel, association go ahead and pick whatever color they want. And I'm sure everybody may have this as part of their condo docs of if you're going to be changing the color on the exterior building or any sort of visible component, that there may be a vote where you need to have a certain percentage of approval, whether it be 51%, 2/3, 99.999, what have you. All right. Also, during and this is going to be actually, I think, the last item that we're going to be talking about here before we get to the questions, is the OAC meeting minutes or OAC meetings. So OAC, you see, it stands for owner, architect, contractor. Again, I guess they just, for whatever reason, didn't like OEC, but A and E are swappable. These will typically occur once a week or every other week. And this is just going to be a status update, a summary. At times it may be open to the public, other times and the public, I mean the association or the rest of the group, other times only the actual board. This may also go hand in hand with any monthly town halls that you may have, but that would just be a deal usually done by your association and your owner's rep or your engineer if you want to go ahead and present it in that fashion. But as far as a typical construction project, this is what you'd be dealing with. It would be the project status compared to the original or revised schedule, any upcoming delays that they're aware of, any hurricane on the forecast, material shortage, labor shortage, payment issues. We'll talk about change order status, RFI status, overall payment status. It's just the formalized meeting of that. Any added coordination that's necessary between multiple trades or actually on site. If you're doing unit access related work, the on-site access component is going to be crucial and may even be better to go ahead and even hire on a separate entity either through your management company or what have you to assist in that site coordination aspect of things. I strongly look into that, see whether or not it makes fiscal sense for your specific association. And the inspection and reporting status. Is the authority having jurisdiction, or the city, do they have everything they need? Is the city doing any added inspections on top of what your inspecting engineer or architect is already doing? Do you need a threshold inspection that may be coming in on such and such date? So this work needs to be done or at this level before that inspection occurs. The OAC meeting is great to just go ahead and get everything on the table, and the meeting minutes will reflect what was generally discussed within that meeting and logged as part of the entire project. So this will be kept in-house within a binder, just like your plans will be kept on site, or a version of the plans will be kept on site, change orders, and other corresponding detail as well. One other thing I did want to go ahead and make mention on here regarding delays. Oh, here we go. So this is something that I've been seeing as far as contracts are concerned as of late, and really a lot of it's stemming from 2020 and moving on. And it's honestly, that's the right thing, I believe, is the contract or the contractor's contract will only absorb a certain percentage of material pricing increase. So usually anywhere from 1% to 5%. Now, using plywood again as an example, I mean, we all saw plywood prices just for the average homeowner or average person working with plywood double, triple, quadruple at a certain point. It's insane. Now, if plywood was the main material needed for a project, you can imagine that the contractor, if they bid in 2019, let's say, and the work was done in 2020 at the height of everything, the cost for them to buy that plywood would be insane, probably eat up the entire budget. So that's why these certain new provisions have been put in place, which I think is honestly a fair approach to that. And that can certainly be a negotiated percentage for any sort of contract. So, in a nutshell, that is construction documentation 101, if you will. Like Ashley stated, so we'll go ahead and we'll get any of these CEUs processed and sent over to you. But thank you very much for your time. And I'm just going to jump into some of the Q&A while we have some time left. And let's see how many we can knock out. All right, so from Dan, will I address transmittals? I did not, but I certainly can. So transmittals are really just going to be a cover sheet for submittals, basically, or any other large package being sent across. And a transmittal will just be a cover sheet that's going to have several lines that basically say, okay, you're going to have your roofing submittal, your painting submittal, and your concrete submittal all in one package. Oh, and associated NOAs for all these things. And it's going to be itemized out, and it's going to be signed by the contractor to show that it was there. And then on receipt, it's going to be signed by the engineer or whoever is being delivered to, so you confirm receipt. Now back in the day, it was all done paper-wise. Now you can just do it electronically as well. So either way, there's so many even different programs out there that could track these items effectively during the course of that project. Retainage, we spoke about retainage. Okay. Acceptable turnaround time from a change order from the time submitted by the contractor. We did discuss that. A lot of that's going to be stipulated within the AIA documents, but usually roughly about a week, maybe 2 weeks with a worst case scenario. But again, this is a perfect opportunity to go ahead and place in the contract, take the thinking out of it. That's why contracts exist. It's really going to make everyone's life a whole lot easier if those steps are made. All right. Okay, a very specific question. Okay, under an emergency order, board approved not to exceed $700,000, excuse me, proposal to address seawall concerns from Tropical Storm Ian and Nicole, excuse me. Contractor has not been easy to work with and did not want to sign a formal contract. Is this a real problem in not having a formal contract? For that dollar amount, I would say that it could certainly pose a problem, if nothing else, just from the engineering standpoint of things and the inspections to hold the contractor's feet to the fire of conforming to a certain plan set. Now, emergency repairs will certainly come up, obviously, but perhaps in this scenario, this may be a design build component, which a lot of seawall projects do have. So there would essentially be an agreement between the seawall contractor and the seawall designer. But this would fall more in line of a legal-based question, but on the cover page of this, I would see that as being an issue of not having a formalized contract. Formalized contracts exist for the benefit of everyone, plain and simple. They're not one-way streets whatsoever. Okay, I have a 4-story building to repair and will hire an engineering firm to inspect and provide an assessment. Would an engineering firm be able to collect bids and oversee the repair? Yes, absolutely. It all depends on what engineering firm, obviously, whether or not they have the supporting staff to support that. But yes, so under, let's just say, a typical facade restoration project may include an evaluation period by the engineer to go ahead and obtain some tangible in-field data to forecast repairs, to extrapolate repairs. So if you have a rectangular tower, maybe doing anywhere from 1 to probably 2 drops might be the Goldilocks spot, but there's certain scenarios that may want to go ahead and dictate 4 drops. It depends on the budget for the association, the level of confidence you may want to have, but you're only going to learn so much. I strongly would not recommend doing 100% sample size, basically, of your facade. Even if you were to go ahead and do that, the number still would not be accurate, and you're better off using those funds to get more repairs done if and when they come up. But yes, the engineer firm or the owner's representative can distribute the RFP and the bids and request bids from the contractors, can receive the bids, review the bids, put them all into a bid comparison sheet. So you have everything apples to apples, so the client or the association can make an intelligent decision as to which route they'd want to go forward. Okay. Can we talk about planned roof replacement specifically? Anything different or actually we need to think about from what's presented when we're replacing roofs? There will be a couple others, like a couple added steps. We did touch on roofs, but from a roofing standpoint of things, usually what you want to go ahead and confirm is whether or not you have any trapped moisture underneath the existing membrane. So the municipality may dictate a roof moisture survey be performed prior to know whether or not you are going to be still retaining your topping slab or any sort of underlayment or not. And that could be done by a third-party testing lab. There's several out there, and the cost is not that bad, depending on your roof price or your roof size. Excuse me. You're talking a task that's certainly going to be definitely less than $10,000, even on the worst-case scenario. How do you establish reasonable liquidated damages amount? In Florida, do you have to document that you suffered actual loss to collect damages? Okay, so two parts of that question. So the first part of the question, how do you establish reasonable liquidated damages amount? That is going to be typically dealt with your community association attorney as to what's reasonable. Probably gonna have some construction background to go ahead and put in a certain dollar amount. But that dollar amount is going to vary depending on the overall contract price. Usually it's not going to make any sense to go ahead if you have a $50,000 repair project. It's not going to make sense to go ahead and or the contractor may not agree to $5,000 penalty a day. But if the actual repair value of the construction project is going to be $500,000 or sorry, $500 million, if $500 million, then obviously $5,000 a day is a drop in the bucket. So that's something to go ahead and keep track of. And in Florida, do you have to document actual loss to collect damages? It depends on the details of the contract. If you're going to be filing, let's say, like an insurance claim or something like that, or damages against the actual contractor, if it was a construction defect, for example, then obviously you need to document that differently. And that's going down another whole rabbit hole, which we can talk about for days, I'm sure. All right, so who prepares all these logs? Should the contract require the contractor to prepare, maintain, and update this information, or should it be addressed in the contract within the design professional? So these logs are usually maintained by the design professional or the owner's representative. I mean, this is going to be a shared document. I've been in scenarios where we've utilized programs such as like Procore to normalize and keep everything on a cloud-based server, so everyone has access to it. But there will be, it is usually dictated within the actual contract, but this falls more in line with the inspecting engineer or the owner's representative to maintain, prepare, and keep track of. The one thing I would strongly recommend is that for the as-built, that those as-built, depending on the project, be at least initially updated by the contractor, because their contractor will be having a separate party or separate entity, even on site, to do that role specifically. Are the copies of logs maintained on site? I answered that. Okay, CAM information. I'm sorry, I do not know that. But we will certainly tackle that. Oh, we speak on OEMs at the time of project closeout. So OEMs, so this is, or O&Ms, so operation maintenance manuals or operation maintenance documentation. This is going to come with even your submittal package. So they could be done either on the front end or even on the back end when you have your actual warranties and everything coming in. But they're basically just going to be books, depending on whatever it's going to be. Let's say you have a new heater, a pool heater, and it's going to be giving you the operations and maintenance manuals for that pool heater. If it's going to be, let's say, for a sliding glass door, for example, and you're on the coast, there may be some operation and maintenance manuals with respect to how often do you service the rollers, how often do you have to clean the actual glass or any sealants, things like that are going to be talked about within those documents. So typically, and here's a question, OAC, can they only be had with board members only or open to members only? It's really going to be at the discretion of each property. Usually it's more effectively done if it's just going to be board members because you have decision makers at the table. But there may be scenarios where the association may want to have it as an open meeting. But it really is a meeting that can last anywhere from 15 minutes to 2 hours of the worst case scenario, just to talk about the ongoing business. Who's responsible for creating the OAC meeting minutes is going to be either the engineer or the owner's rep. Okay, I know we're 2 minutes over. I just want to see if I can grab one or two more. I actually tackled a lot of these questions, which I'm happy about. Where is Megan Ganem? She's actually sick today, but thanks for asking. I'll be sure to pass that on. Who initiates the change order? That's going to be the contractor initiating the change order. Typically, it's going to be a contract or a contractor change. Now, there may be the contractor change may impact your inspecting engineer change. So you might see an engineering change order be submitted as well. So that's important to go ahead and make mention. And if there's an owner's rep one as well, there may be an owner's rep one depending on the details of the original contract. All right, let me grab one last one, and I think that'll do it. Oh, okay. This is a good one. Should associations have some kind of bond or insurance provided by a contractor if there is a failure to perform or the contractor goes out of business? So there are performance and payment bonds, which certainly the association or the owner can go ahead and elect to essentially pay for. Now, I would recommend considering these items if the project is going to be of a large dollar amount. So we're talking millions of dollars here. Now, that percentage is usually going to be roughly about 2% of the overall project value, but that could provide actual benefit to the association in those scenarios. There's a variety of different things out there as well. I mean, the contractor is obviously going to go ahead and have associated insurances to do the work in the first place. And those details will be itemized out within the contract and certainly be supplemented likely by the association's counsel on those guidelines. And also even the management company may have their own requirements for any quote unquote vendor doing business on their quote unquote property. All right. I think we got 80% of them, 90% of them. So I think I got that. I think we're okay. So I hope you all enjoyed the very detail heavy conversation, and I hope I didn't lose you to either complexity or just sleep. So thank you all. And Ashley, thank you again for this opportunity.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for doing the presentation. And I will be emailing out the presentation, so a copy of the presentation, a link to the video recording. I will be emailing out Ben's contact information and information on all of our current coming events after via email. And I will be giving Ben and his team the attendee list so that they can get you their CEU credits. I would say probably give them about 2 weeks to get that done. And with that, yeah, that's it. Thank you everybody for coming, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for watching. For more great educational content, click the subscribe button now.